So you have Patrick Findaro here, co-founder at Vetted Biz and Visa Franchise. Jeff Oddo, CEO and owner of Citywide Facility Solutions. Thanks for joining today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for doing this.
So tell me a little bit about your family business. I understood at a relatively young age, you had a lot of different options in terms of what industry you were going to get into.
Well, that's true. My dad, well, I guess I'll back up with my grandpa. My grandpa came here from Italy and he was a horseman. And he told my father that boys are like stallions and you put three boys in the same stable, same pasture, and they'll kill one another. So if you want your boys to work in the family business, you better have multiple family businesses. And so that's what my dad did. He had 14 different companies, and we didn't have a choice on whether or not we were going to work in the business or not. We were going to work with the family, but we got to choose which business it was, just so long as one of the other siblings was not already in that business.
So what were the options you had?
Well, we were chemical manufacturers, we were distributors, had our own pest control company, we had our own lawn and landscaping vehicles, we had lawn and maintenance was a completely different division, construction, banking, international, we had all these different things. And my uncle worked in the chemical manufacturing and distribution business, and I loved him, so I went and worked for him. So that was just really easy for me to just follow my uncle. It wasn't really anything.
And then I understand you worked about 10 years in that business?
Yeah, I worked 6 years, and then my dad asked me to take over the chemical manufacturing. I was running the chemical manufacturing at that point, and then my dad asked me to take over the janitorial service company at that time. And after a couple of years, I realized we're owned by a holding company. In 1976, I was 10 years old. My dad gave us 100% of the stock because his father was sick and dying, and there was 90% income taxes. And he said,
90% of the time.
90%. So if you die, you lose basically everything. So my dad.
I knew it was like that like 100 years ago, and people are complaining so much about income tax. Like I don't have that much sympathy. Like especially living in Florida, it's not that bad.
Well, in fairness, there were lots of loopholes, but you had to spend a lot of time and money and effort with the lawyers to figure out the loopholes, but it's still 90%. So my dad said, well, I'm not going to take a chance of dying and losing the entire company.
Losing everything.
Government. He gave it to us. So the holding company owned all these companies, and then the brothers come in. We get rid of the peripheral companies. We focus on the ones that we are in. And because the three boys owned the holding company, all cash was swept to the holding company. And what I realized is that in 2 years of running the janitorial company, at that time we were just janitorial, we had contributed more to the holding company in cash, which is swept to the development company, because with the money that we make over here, we build apartments and warehouses over there in the development company. I had contributed more in 2 years in the janitorial company than I had in 6 years in the chemical manufacturing and distribution.
Your impact was much bigger, and you're like, I'm saying in this business.
Well, the impact to the family through cash contribution was much bigger. So even though the chemical company was a bigger company than the janitorial, the bigger you grow, and this is the advice to your people who are looking to decide what kind of franchise or what kind of business to get into. My personal experience, what I realized at this time was all of my capital, we grew 600% in 6 years. We took over this 30-year-old company. We grew 600% in 6 years. And 100% of the capital was spent in accounts receivables, more trucks, and more vehicles. I didn't contribute a single dime to the holding company. So, okay, well, great. We're making more money. We're growing. But with zero free cash flow, that is contradictory to what we as a family want. We wanted to create wealth, generational wealth through real estate and development. But in order to do that, you had to have cash flow. And the chemical company was profits only, no cash flow.
It might have looked like nice EBITDA, but you're reinvesting everything.
Everything. So the janitorial company, much smaller, and it was much more free cash flow to the development company. So that's when I decided to sell the chemical company with the votes of the family. And we bought a piece of property and put a nice size apartment complex on it that's still there today.
How did you navigate like the family dynamics? Like I've seen it go a lot of different ways, like from friends where everything's like buttoned up, like happy marriages and the grandchildren or even great grandchildren are involved in the business or they're outside of the business, but people are living fulfilled lives. And then I've seen the other way where it's like a mix of like unfulfilled lives, fulfilled lives. Like, what do you think was a success to you and the Oddo family to kind of do it with intention, I guess, or I don't know.
Well, there's a lot to unpack into that one question there. I'll start probably with what's most relevant for the audience today is that, we're all trying, we're listening, people who are listening to this are listening to try to decide probably and have a little discernment on which business they want to get into or what they want to do next with the next chapter in their life. And what was very clear as an Italian family was that family was first. Even though my dad said that he would fire any one of us or all of us if we weren't the best versions of ourselves and if we weren't the best in each position, he was really quite adamant on you're not entitled to anything just because your last name is Oddo. You're not entitled to anything. I'll provide you an opportunity, he would say, but you have to produce. And we're very much a values-driven organization. And if our whole purpose is to positively impact others, then there's no place for nepotism. And so, I think that the reason for our success is we had a father who was very clear on who we are and where we're going and how we're going to get there. And I say this in a loving way. It might come out as a little bit wrong in today's words, but he was a dictator. And, he's a depression baby. And in those days when you're standing in line for food and you're hungry, the way that they led people in the 50s and the 60s are a lot different than the way that we do it now. But that mindset of he controlled our salaries until we were 50 years old. I mean, he told us exactly how much we were going to make, and it was going to be the same amount of money as a brother 7 years older, no cost of living increase or anything. It's just, this is the way it was. But when you have a strong authoritarian figure who's visionary and supports you everywhere along the way, I love the fact that one of the things that he did was once we found out that we owned the company, we didn't know that we owned the company. We're probably till 25 years oldish.
Good.
He said,
you shouldn't know you're rich until you shouldn't know your parents are rich until like mid-20s.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And that's why he said, I want you to be poor. You got to be poor. Everybody needs to be poor at one point in their life because you will appreciate the value of a dollar so much more. And you will appreciate.
You'll have empathy with other people. If you appreciate the value of the dollar, like you're on the same wavelength as other, 95% of people.
Yeah, and that's what he did. So it's been a wonderful experience working with my mom and dad. My mom comes in every Wednesday still today. My dad's every day, 87 years old for 35 years. We go have lunch together as a family and then board meetings. It's been a Cinderella type story.
And why franchising? Like, I'm sure you could have just opened up more corporate locations and staff and used the proceeds for your family real estate development. Why franchising? Why go through all that?
Well, I think there's two parts to that story. I'm going to focus on the altruistic motivation, even though it's not completely altruistic. Henry Ford said, if you help enough people get what they want in life, then you can have everything that you ever wanted in life. So there's certainly a financial component of it. But I would say that I was much more driven by the desire to help others. I'm a middle child. I'm a people pleaser. And I went to a school, and I always hate telling this story, but it's the truth is I didn't feel like I fit in. And I blamed it on the fact that we were rich, even though we weren't rich, but we had a little bit more money as business owners than others. And so I always felt like I didn't fit in because of the money. So I've never liked money. And so the story I tell myself in between my ears, which is the biggest battle that any one of us face, is the voices in our own head. I told myself that money was bad and not really interested, and I don't have a real positive connection with money. So I was never really completely fulfilled, making more money, doing well. But a man by the name of Tom Hill, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, came to my YPO group and said, hey, I travel the world talking to YPOers, and they almost all have the same thing in common. They're all financially successful. They're making money. They're doing all right. They're not struggling with paying the bills, but they're all struggling with one thing. And he goes around the room, anybody know what it is? And, everybody's guessing, more time, more help, more this, more that. And they're like, nope. The number one thing that all of these YPOers and successful business owners that he talks to, the number one complaint that they have is significance. He says, it's not good enough to be financially successful. You have to be significant in this world as well. You have to make a difference in the lives of others. And the number one best way to become significant is to help others achieve the same kind of success you have. And
So
the number one way to
teaching
do
others
that,
to fish.
yes, and the number one way to do that is through franchising.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, that story, when a student is ready, a teacher will appear. And it just kind of blew my mind. And I went home that night and I started researching. Within 2 weeks, I hired my competitor, Janet King. I don't consider myself to be competitors with Janet King, but at the time we were. And I hired the guy, my competitor from Janet King. And within 2 weeks, I was in the franchising business. And it's been the best thing that's ever happened because of the impact that we have. We all wear these ripple pins. And it's all about making a difference in the world. I don't think most people join the Citywide family because they are passionate about cleaning toilets or cutting grass or painting buildings. I think that most people who choose Citywide, franchisees, contractors, and our employees, choose Citywide because they love the vision, mission, and values. And so again, back to your audience of whatever you're looking for, man, the first thing you should be trying to align yourself with is somebody who shares your vision, mission, and values. Because at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about. You can make money anywhere, but life's too short to work with people you're not in alignment with. And if you can find an organization that you love and or loves and cares and respects you, then what a great place to be.
How many franchisees do you have now?
Well, we have over 100 locations with, so we're just broke 100. And we have 165 total available in the U.S. and Canada. So we're almost 2/3 of the way there. We're a little bit more than half.
And what type of franchisee are you looking for besides matching the mission, core values? Is it someone that's already been an entrepreneur, corporate executive type?
Yeah, there's 3 things that we look for besides an alignment, like you said, mission, vision, values. And besides, I'd say being a good person, man. I just want to every single franchisee has to go through me. And there are 3 things that I'm looking for out of this relationship, and I tell them what those 3 things are. But one of the things, our entire process is us interviewing them. They think they're interviewing us, but in reality, we're interviewing them every bit as much as they're interviewing them. So what I'm looking for out of these franchisees, I tell them there's 3 things that you need. Either a business acumen. You have to be a CEO or a COO or a general manager. You need to understand hiring and firing and finance and
you want
HR.
P&L responsibility.
Yes. If you've got P&L, that's bucket number 1. Bucket number 2 is we're a sales organization. We don't have any equipment. We don't have any inventory. We don't have any vehicles. We have no hourly employees. We are truly a sales and client experience management company. So you need to have sales experience. And the third thing we're looking for is industry experience, B2B industry, not janitorial, because we're not a janitorial company. I do not want to have anybody on our team with janitorial experience because they think that they come from that industry and then they try to.
Seems like you're like a one-stop shop for everything the building owner needs.
We're a management company in the building maintenance industry. So instead of one service, we start with wherever the customer wants, and we can do any of 25 services through a hosted group of vetted contractors. It's phenomenal. But so what I tell them when they're coming, it's like, I can't teach you all 3. I can teach you 1 out of 3 really well, and we'll kill it. You'll be the fastest one to, if I don't have to teach you anything, you'll be the fastest one to $10 million. 1 out of 3, you're going to be faster. 2 out of 3, you're going to be slowest. And if I got to teach you out 3 out of 3, you need to go find an opportunity someplace else. I can't do it.
Come back to us.
Yeah, right. Come back when you have it, because you're either going to be disappointed in me now by me saying no, or you're going to hate me by saying yes, and then proving to you that this is too long and hard of a grind. So we have to turn down a lot of people, and people are like amazed at how can you turn me down? It's my money. It's my time. I want to do it. And I say, because I don't want you to struggle and fail. It's a reflection on all of us. And we are only going to give the opportunities to people who we really, really believe in. Now, we might have passed up on some very talented people, no doubt. I don't have a crystal ball like anybody else. But, we're doing our best. And I took over after 30 years, Patrick, we were doing $200,000 in monthly revenue. I just got the financials this morning. Took us 30 years to get to 200,000. 30 years later, with franchising, We did over $65 million last month. So
Oh, wow.
to
So
go from
system-wide
200,000.
revenue tracking to be 700 mil plus.
Yeah. 65, 720 plus another 60, $780 million, something like that.
So yeah, talking about impact, like you would have had, what, just 1/10, 1/5 of the impact if you
Had we
didn't decide to go franchising.
Totally agree. And that's where I go back to Ford's comment. And it's been so rewarding. I thought I was giving to them, and in reality, I end up getting it in return. So it's been a wonderful relationship. There's challenges with being a franchisor and a franchisee. We're not always in alignment. What's best for the franchisor is not always what's best for the
Sure.
franchisee. And there are some challenges inherently built into it, but I can't think of a better business model than franchise. And I'll give you one other example on why I feel so strongly about this is I will tell our prospects, I say, what I'm really good at, my team as the franchisor, I'm really good with back house support services, really good at, which means, Patrick, I'll act like you are my prospect. If you love designing IT systems, reading manuals, writing manuals, developing chart of accounts, choosing which marketing platform and how we're going to host it.
Vendor sourcing.
Right. You are going to be a terrible franchisee. Thank you very much. If that's what you love, go do it with somebody else. But that's what we're really good at. But if you're really good at sales and the client experience, then we're a match made in heaven, right? You do what you love, we do what we love, and we come together and there's synergies. That's where this 1 + 1 = 3. That's a phenomenal business relationship, and franchising does that almost always universally when you get it right on the front end and you choose the right person.
I see with franchising, like the more time I've spent studying the model, there are some great organizations and groups that like think really long term, but there's also so much money coming in with like private equity backed and owners and come and going, executives coming and going, where sadly there's been a lot of people that are almost kind of swindled into buying a semi-absentee business that it's not actually semi-absentee. And what are some ways like prospective franchisees can like have their guard up and while they're evaluating franchisors, like what kind of questions, I guess, would you ask or that your current franchisees asked that you were like, okay, that's a good question. I'm glad they're bringing this up.
Great question, because it is harder and harder to find really good businesses. I think there's this latest statistic is there's over 60 or 65% of all franchise systems are owned by private equity. And as you know, private equity basically by definition needs a liquidity event for their investors within 5 to 7 years. And so what you see is these companies, they'll buy a franchise concept that was really, really good. And their sole purpose is to flip it in 5 years and double, triple, or quadruple their investment. And contrast that to a family-owned company like my own, where I didn't make money for the first 10 or 15 years because I was making money on the corporate-owned locations.
Yeah.
And I was trying to help the franchisees. It wasn't about the money. I was just trying to help. But if I was owned by private equity, every decision is
you would have been fired after like a year or two.
Yeah, you're right. So I think that if questions that I would ask is who owns it, how long they owned it, when do they have to flip it. Vision, mission, values, again, is number one. And I would spend more time talking to the franchisees about what's the real picture with the organization as far as the financial opportunity and the culture. I'm going to tell you what I believe to be the truth, but there's two sides of the truth. Is what I believe to be the truth and what the franchisees would say. And so if a prospect is not spending time with our franchisees, I think that's a real mistake, because I want them to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. Definitely. Now, we're going to do our best to share the good, the bad, and the ugly, but the franchisees will do even a better job.
You're biased. It's your baby. It's part of you. You're going to, like with the positivity, it's going to be hard to get the full picture. They got to talk to existing franchisees.
Right. I would encourage, though, if you're looking for an opportunity, I'd come up with 10 questions, and I would talk to at least 10 franchisees about those 10 questions.
10.
Whatever it is that is really important to you. man, and I would rate and contrast that to the multiple different businesses that you're looking at to help you make that decision. And I assume, Patrick, that's what your firm does for your clients, right? Don't you help them with this process?
Yeah, a big part for Visa franchise for the foreign nationals, and then for Americans leveraging vetted biz, it's more of a self-service model where all the data is there. And I think kind of a red flag, like you have some private equity backed franchisors that their EBITDA margin's like 60%. That's coming at a cost to the franchisee, where prior to acquisition, maybe the franchise brand made a 20% profit margin. And then they view that 10-year contract as a customer that can't get out easily, and they start adding different fees. So we make it easy to kind of just see the information, see the lawsuits, see the financial information, franchisor, franchisee level, so that the prospective franchisee, whether they're working with a franchise broker or not, can have at least some data before they have those conversations with the franchisor and the franchisees.
I love it.
And where do you see future growth once you hit those 163 territories?
Well, once we hit that 163 territories, we will have a whopping 1% of the market share.
That's it. That's impressive.
No, isn't that fantastic? So people always like, well, what's next? Like, I don't need anything next. I just need to execute the plan. It's taken us 65 years just to get the foundation. Now the foundation is built. Just start. Okay, we got 1%. How about 2%? And what's interesting is it'll take us 65 years to get to $1 billion, and then it'll take us 4 years to get to $2 billion.
Wow. Isn't
that amazing? Because we have every franchisee is basically required to grow by at least $1 million a year to remain in good standings. So if you've got, and they are all doing more than that on average. We grew by $167 million last year with 80 some odd franchisees. So we'll be growing by $250 million a year. So we don't need more services. We don't need more cities. We don't need more tips and tricks. We need to execute the plan. It's just taken us this long to get the foundation in place, and now we're going to kill it. So the hard work's been done. The next 4, 5, 6, 7 years is going to be pretty exciting.
Is there any financials that you can share on the franchisee level in terms of like time to scale up or profit margins or any of the financials you're comfortable sharing?
Well, as long as you put a disclaimer on there that says this is not an earnings claim and you need to look at the item 19 and don't listen to the franchisor and all that good stuff. Our goal is everybody needs to be at $10 million in 10 years is the minimum to be in good standing. Our average right now, I want to say is $8 million some odd dollars. And that's with a lot of new markets. And we should be in the lower double digits net profit. So, and that's with them paying themselves a salary and running as much through the business as they can within what's legally allowed. So, and then the best part about it is not only are you making, let's call it at least $1 million a year, which I'm not promising or insinuating that you could, but if you could, then these businesses trade at 5 or 6, 7 times. Multiple.
And you started, how much does it cost to start a citywide?
Well, our item 19 says it costs $350,000-ish. And I think it's probably, in there, give or take $150,000 either way. We've got a lot of examples, both ways of doing that. But at the end of I think about this, what I think about is at the end of 15 months, you'll be doing I'm going to say $70,000 in monthly recurring contract business. Okay. And you can turn around and sell that tomorrow for 4 times. So you're doing $80,000 and you want out, you sell it for 4 times, it's $320,000. You've got about $320,000 in it. It's such an amazing opportunity. You get almost a free look and see to see whether or not you like the business or not. Now, we offer that to almost every single person that says, I'll buy it back if you don't like it. Hardly anybody, it's not an official in writing, but no one ever, rarely does anybody ever truly want out. But
that's one stat we have on Vetted Biz, and I'll have to be sure to give you access, but we look at the initial investment amount, the midpoint per the item 7 compared to the resale value. And like your type of business or like a home care staffing business, like can trade at 5, 10x plus the initial investment, where you look at a Subway and it's like you invest $320, you're going to sell it for $200.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would you start one from zero? And why would you even buy an existing one, like with the numbers?
I would love to show you on your website, maybe if we could do this at another time. We can't do it today, I'm sure, and I would have to clarify it with legal, but we consider ourselves a unicorn business because we compared ourselves to Walmart and McDonald's and all these big Apple and all Target, all these huge names, and we show them what their cash flow is, their margins are, and what that return on equity is. And they're all like down in here, and ours is unbelievable. You won't believe it, but we took just one of our performance groups that was on our FAC, the Franchise Advisory Council. We took the Franchise Advisory Council and we said, okay, just your random group of people, let us show you what your numbers are. And we've got this little chart. If I could share that with you, I would absolutely love to, because most people would never believe it. Because remember, Patrick, we have no equipment, no inventory, no vehicles, no hourly employees. So all we do is produce cash. So if it costs you $350,000 to get in, let's just use that as an example.
Where does most of that money go?
Salaries. You got to hire a salesperson or two, and rent. That's all there is.
Yeah.
So you got to start with $350,000, and then let's just fast forward to 10 years, and you're making $1 million a year every single year. And I don't know what that I do know what that IRR is. I just can't tell you what it is, but it's absolutely phenomenal. And I think it's why nobody hardly ever wants to leave the franchise or citywide system, because before long they hire a general manager. They're running the day-to-day business. They got the quality of life that they want. They've got good cash flow. It's just been I wish I could take all the credit for this amazing business model, but there's just been some wonderful people in my life. My father, Mr. Cho, which we didn't talk about, which is fine, and Tom Hill, these three people, and my mother, of course, and brothers. I mean, it's just kind of been this evolution of and the blessings that we have to be able to get to where we are today.
Now you got to tell me, what's the deal with Mr. Cho?
Mr. Cho, at the time we were a janitorial company. I think we were talking about this maybe before we started recording, but at the time we were just a janitorial company, and I literally just hated the janitorial business. We had all of our own in-house employees and equipment. And my wife and I were married, and we have our first kid, and every night, we'd sell during the day. I'd sell during the day, and then I'd go pick her up at home. We take our daughter, and she's in her little car seat, and we go clean. And that's just the way it was. And I told you we have lunch every Wednesday for 35 years. And I go to the family lunch and I say, Mom, Dad, brothers, I love you guys. I'm thankful for the opportunity, but I hate this business. Now, we're taught we're not supposed to hate anything other than Hitler or cancer. So those are only two things we're allowed to hate as a family. But I said, I hate this business, right? I mean, I can't make anybody happy. I can't find people who care about us or the customers. So they're like, oh my God, we've been doing this for 30 years. You've been doing it for not even 30 weeks and you're complaining. Are you done? Can we order dessert now? Let's move on. Well, I don't know if I was really willing to quit or not, but I was really unhappy. I was really soul searching. The very next day, Mr. Cho comes along, knocks on my door the very next day and says, hey, do you do any subcontracting? To which I said proudly, no, Mr. Cho, we do everything with in-house employees. And he said, well, let me tell you an option. I have lost my only account. I'm from Dallas. I don't want to move back. I've got 35 people on staff trained who are ready to go to work tonight. Ding, 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 ding. And so, okay, now we're talking. Sit down, my friend. I said, why don't you meet me up at these? I had 4 mid-rise office buildings up at the airport. Meet me up there tonight. I'll show you one of the buildings. He says, no, I take them all tonight. I said, no, just meet me up there. I'll show you one of them. We go out, do our thing. We go to the day laborers. We pick up our day laborers, me and my managers. We've got a car full of day people. I pull in, Patrick, and there is Mr. Cho standing at attention in uniform with 35 Koreans. And I get out of the car, I look in my rearview mirror, and I see these guys. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the world to say, okay, something might be here. I said, fellas, you go get yourself a smoke break. I walk over and I said, Mr. Cho, hello, who's this? He says, this is my family. I said, who's this lovely lady? Are you Mrs. Cho? Mrs. Cho. Nobody speaks a lick of English. And so I said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So we spent a few minutes. Long story short, I turn over all 4 buildings to Mr. Cho that night. I said, I don't even know how I'll pay you. But you got a handshake and my word that we'll figure it out. I will pay you everything I'm paying, and I'll make you a profit. And he did, and he was absolutely wonderful. I went the very next day, the property manager calls me and it's like, oh my God, whatever you did last night, amazing, by the way. Do you have a roofer?
Huh.
I say, yeah, of course I've got a roofer. What do
Yeah.
you need? She tells me, I hang up. It's like, oh shit, what do I do now? I don't have a roofer. Call my brother and the development company. I said, I need one of our roofers today, not tomorrow, today. Friday afternoon, they have it fixed. He says, it's going to cost you $250. So I thought we were partners, So he's like, $250. So I call Kim back, the property manager. I say, I got your roof fixed as well, and I was scared to death to mark it up. $250.
Huh.
She went from hating me, hating, strong word again. She went from not being very happy at all with me to I was like her hero. So the next Wednesday comes along and I said, hey, I think I might be onto something. I don't think we have to be limited to just janitorial. And I don't think that we have to have all of our own equipment inventory.
You're the trusted advisor.
Right. There's tons of people out there that do it. But I've got the sales experience or the relationship with this customer. And we've got the cash flow, which is why our contractors stand in line. We do the sales for them. We do the client experience for them so they can do what they do best. They don't ever have to talk to the customer. And we guarantee them payment. So we've got them standing in line who want to do business with us versus the in-house employees who I'm begging to show up. I can't find people to work. Now I've got them standing in the line. It's been and it's all because
how's the model? You mentioned Jenny King earlier, and like there's a bunch of franchises like in your, I don't want to say in your niche because they're just doing janitorial services, right, but they have like an area developer, master franchisee. What's your model like? Is it two-tiered or it's just straight to there's a franchisee and then they have their own contractors?
Correct. You were right about Janet King being just janitorial. So whereas we do all 25 services, but the biggest difference between Janet King and us besides that is all of their cleaners are mini franchise owners.
Which for me doesn't make sense and I know like California is going after their business model and like because it seems like sometimes it can be like indentured servitude where they signed an agreement and they have to fulfill. You'll get them contracts, but it's like they might not make minimum wage, and it's like.
And the problem, unfortunately, with all of these entry level service business models, there's some truism in all of that, and I just did not like it, even though I told you I got into the business for 2 weeks and I hired the Janet King. And when he told me that, it's like, this is terrible. Yeah. We are developers. We're general contractors. I don't want sub-franchisees. I want independent business owners who I can fire the very next day. You know how hard it is to get rid of a franchisee who's not performing.
Both sides. You want to have optionality, and then they should get out too. If they're not making money and it doesn't make economic sense, they're out.
And the franchise model, it constrains those lower end workers. But I said, okay, I love the partner in Indianapolis being my franchise owner, but I don't want all of the people under them being franchise owners. I want.
And you see it with the turnover. I think it was like Jan Pro, like they close like hundreds of locations a year, and it's all these like mini franchisees, the sub franchisees.
I don't want to say it's a terrible model, but ours is completely different. Our model is also completely different than everybody else on the customer side. So imagine Janet King. This is not. Let's use somebody else. So let's use U.S. Lawn and Landscaping, right? It doesn't matter. Or a pest control company, or College Hunks, or CertaPro Painters. They all represent themselves, right? If I'm a painting company or a roofing or a plumber, they represent themselves. We've turned the industry completely on its head. We're the only company that I know of that represents the client. We go in there and say, we're not the cleaning company. You pay me $100 a month, and for $100 a month, I will find you and manage for you and replace for you, because we will need to replace the janitorial company, I assure you, every so often. But for $100 a month, you get a part-time facility manager, one of our employees, and then our job is to go replace your weakest contractor, and one at a time, one service at a time, we are going to replace your weakest contractors with better and better and better. They report to us. You get one invoice. On average, a customer is 5, 6, 7 service lines with us. Nobody in 65 years has ever said, oh, Jeff, great idea. I'm going to fire all my great vendors just because it's a great idea. They don't. They start with their worst contractor that's out to bid. Yeah. And then they love us so much because we represent them. They say, gosh, this is awesome. Can you do this for us? And that's
how's the financials? Like, do you get any, I guess you bill them and then you build in like some sort of margin?
But it's very simple. It's the A plus B plus C equals the price the customer pays. So let's use ABM, the world's largest, or the United States' largest cleaning company. ABM has professional sales, professional sales and managers. ABM has professional office admin, cash flow, right? The accounting, the legal, the HR. And then they have all the equipment, inventory, and vehicles. A, sales management. B, back house services. C, equipment, inventory, and vehicles. And a profit they mark it up is the price the customer pays.
Yeah.
That's what we did for 30 years. But we changed it, Patrick, to say I'm really good at the sales and client experience, A, and the back office support, B, and we go find the hundreds of lawn and landscaping contractors that are in every city who are really skilled at what they do. They've got excess capacity. We geofence them. We hold them accountable to a certain number of buildings because we don't want them to outgrow their own abilities. We don't want them hiring managers and middlemen, and then the quality goes down.
Yeah.
And we don't want somebody who is so sophisticated that they can do the A and B, because then we duplicate overhead and the model breaks down. But we've got, I'm telling you, I mean, it's not easy to find the best contractors, but we have a great pipeline of contractors almost always once we get started on people wanting to do business with Citywide.
Jeff, you shared a lot about your story, the business model. Any concluding thoughts for prospective franchisees?
Yes, we never got to talk about my book, The 10 Commandments, which is where we wanted to spend all of our time. Not really.
Exactly.
Do I have any thoughts for prospective franchisees? Yes, I'd find a good coach. There are a lot of coaches out there. I think there's 5 major broker networks. It's really important that you find a good coach. And I would say I give most people the benefit of the doubt. I think most of them are good coaches. But there are a lot of coaches who are in it for the money. You know, it's like police officers. There's one teeny tiny percent of bad people. There's one teeny tiny bad percent of airline pilots.
That's on the media.
You just got to find somebody who's really interested in learning about what you need and will match it for you, rather than who's going to pay them the most for a 4-pack or a 6-pack in your market. That's the downside of the broker network, but most of them are very, very good. That'd be my advice. Find a really good broker. And you're not going to know who it is, which is the hard part, which is why I recommend they hire you, Patrick, to help them figure it out.
Well, Jeff, really appreciate it. And what's the best way for people to get in contact with your colleagues at Citywide and hopefully you as they go through the evaluation process?
Citywidefranchise.com. Citywidefranchise.com.
We'll include that in the YouTube description as well as the podcast notes.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate all that you do. Good luck.
Thanks.